Ooh, hi, how are you? Okie dokie. So here we are. I am live. I wanted to talk about emotions, universal law or laws, and something about global change, wasn't it? Oh, well done, me. Um, Global transformation, maybe? Did I say? Okay, here we are. It's February 22nd, 2026, fire horse year in Chinese astrology, where we've had a potent and powerful conjunction with Saturn and Neptune in 0 degrees of Aries, which I just, to me, is so symbolic of transformation, renewal, rebirth, where the higher vision of Neptune is ushering us to attune to our innate and unique spirituality, Aries, the self. And Saturn is going to help us create those structures. With Pluto and Aquarius, it's like the structures that don't serve the whole are crumbling and collapsing. And I'm seeing that as, like, again, a long-standing distortion of truth via the wound of separation, leading to the divide and conquer colonialist structure born of fear. And the transition is to move into unity consciousness and higher love, right? Like an unconditional love for our common humanity on a shared planet. And then I think of even a primary distortion is Earth being what we call Mother Earth, so a female planet, and that one, we call it the patriarchy, a colonialist capitalist structure, patriarchy, where men rule the world. And it's sort of an inherent distortion because she's a feminine planet. Not that matriarchal structures would want to dominate, control, divide, conquer, and destroy. Matriarchal is in alignment with Earth's resonance field of circular, resource based sharing, protecting children, protecting one another, and loving one another, and endeavoring to live in harmony with the planet. And that when people act out in destructive ways or in anti-social ways, there's teachings and, a sense of rehabilitation. Oh gosh, we're in such wild, wild times. There's a lot as far as emotions go because, macro, micro, inner, outer, as above, so below, we're all endeavoring that higher order of unification, right? And that has a lot more to do with the universal laws, the divine laws, laws that are sort of eternally held within an expansive universe and a sort of multi-dimensionality within that. And yet, the power of presence and being here now in the moment, to me, is part of harnessing that clarity. As far as grappling with some of these ideations, and I had a thought too, men and women, and there's something different about divide and conquer. So making it about race or gender, when that's perhaps a manipulation from a higher up that keep everybody warring and against one another, rather than the top down, everybody at the bottom of the pyramid kind of going, enough. We're far greater in number, and we don't need to be controlled, ruled, manipulated via media, via narratives, via what have you. We need to return home to the heart, and we need to come back to more harmonious practices and more peaceful life. And that to me has been a big part of the journey of truly endeavoring to embody just my own peace and like live in accordance with that. And sometimes I'm just aware of how radical that is and how different that programming is, as far as not chasing an external reward, but having the power to structure my own day-to-day existence from a place of flow and peace and ease and trust. And I mean, gosh, there's been so much learning around that, um and egoic collapses and financial collapses and like things like this. And yet, as more disclosure, exposure is coming out, for more humans to kind of acknowledge and digest and process some of the more nefarious, dark underbelly of the glamour and the consumerism, we want we we still always want to come back home into our own unique truth. And I was speaking to a friend yesterday about, empathy and how do you really grapple with that. And that's a lot to do with decent humans who wouldn't want to do harm, because you feel the harm, you feel the pain caused, you feel, so you wouldn't you endeavor to not do that. And yet, the reason emotions, I talk a lot about emotions, is that structurally speaking, it would appear that that is what a lot of cultures and societies have deemed wrong, or like bad, or um uh, or even, I saw somebody's post that I thought was really fascinating about how we've flipped it. We kind of inverted and flipped, where men deny their emotions. And this creator was saying how, like, men, like, a lot of parents come out and say, like, boys are very emotional, and women are and little girls are often kind of fiery and like demanding and organized and like wanting to lead. And so it's so if we're looking at inherited trauma, so based in our ancestry, and why we kind of endeavor to unpack um the global economy, how we've got to this point, I want to make sure I talk about historical framing and critical slash abstract thinking, because I recognize this is where a lot of people seem to get stumped, because you have women going, oh, men are da 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 da, or like, and again, in a patriarchy that is born of colonialism and brutally violent um takeover, stealing, right? And then people go, well, not all men. And this is where we need to look, one, at critical thinking and how to kind of look at a historical framing of how have we come to this point and where have we come from. It's that if we're coming from a society that brutalizes, objectifies, demonizes, tries to make or oppresses, right? Because I think for a lot of women, talking about the historical framing, that's what we're endeavoring to say, is that we're still carrying the cells of our ancestors, right? We're still carrying a lot of that programming. And it's really, in my personal experience, it really isn't only through really deep, profound shadow work. So endeavoring to face and feel neglect, shame, abandonment, guilt, like all that cluster with the light of your awareness. That's how we endeavor to break through it. And man, like, so then, and then we have personal karma, personal stuff to do with our like personal reality, but then we have the collective healing and organization. And to me, that has a lot to do with having to face some of the actions of our ancestors and make amends to the people that our ancestors did horrible stuff to and or tried to steal from. And that's where we get a shift of resources and a shift of economy. If we are not anymore feeding corporate greed and individualistic profiteering, then we shift to return. Like we give back the wealth, the inheritance, the stuff that we inherited from our ancestors that took stuff from another group of people, and we end up giving that back, and or we make amends, or and or we share to try to create new structures that uphold, one, the making amends and forgiving of past grievances, both individually, collectively, but among groups of people. And and we move forward in union. together to build something new. And we have to recognize with the Aries signature with Saturn and Neptune, it's not about asking anybody for permission. It's not about asking, like, we can't wait to get permission from leaders or from authorities, because most of that industrialization of the current paradigm or the old paradigm or the structures that would seem to rule this, it's already been sort of usurped or taken. And so there's this unspoken, you know, ongoing psychological warfare that we're having to look at, see, process, digest, forgive self, because an aspect of self bought in, and continue to dialogue. And again, that brings me back to emotions. That's where it can become uncomfortable, where we can unconsciously offend people, where we can take offense, where we might trigger people's shadow, etc., etc. Hence, where, when we're seeing the exposure of these files and the culpability and or accountability of many, many people in different power points of the planet who are doing things that we don't think are good, and yet how that kind of reflects into our personal realities. And one thing that I've had a chat with a couple of people around, yes, we have this like big global media thing going on, exposing, again, nefarious activities. But often what that's doing from the individual perspective is helping us see how these power dynamics, control, dominate, are laced in almost like every layer and level of our society. So people with power, or for example, men with power and assets, and even if it's like on a smaller scale, that they're likely deeply indoctrinated to dominate and control, to deny their emotions, to shut down, and to know, as much as it can be kind of really painful for self to be engaging with that, knowing that you're transforming your own stuff, but once you see, you will see the truth of what's happening and have the power to release yourself from that karmic entanglement, and to trust that, because it's coming from a place of love and compassion, to trust that to each their own will find their way, right? Will eventually endeavor to look at their conditioning, eventually endeavor to look at their privilege, eventually be able to look at their status within a society that is inherently very sick. And this is another part of it, is like, whoa, like taking in the kind of the fullness of like just how distorted and toxic the large majority of our kind of cultural programming really is. And I'll express too, like, that's part of my own, okay, I struggle to, like, I could never work for big corporation. I would do like a shift and then be like, I'm gonna die, I have to leave. Quite early on, because the only jobs I managed to like hold for a bit longer were always like either independent cafes or independent retail stores. And then retail would get to me because I'm like, I really don't like consumerism and fast fashion. So eventually I go freelance, and my mom introduced me to yoga when I was 13. And eventually I just commit to like, I'm going to do yoga every day. And then eventually I start teaching yoga, and it's a very earnest, heart-centered, like, I resonate with this practice. I'm going to learn it for myself. I'm going to practice as much as I can. And then eventually a career opens up, right? And yet over the years, like, people would say, oh, you need to do your TTC. You need to like further, you need to like advance further and teach other people. Or like, I did yoga retreats for a little while in Morocco and different places in the world. And, you know, those were enjoyable while they were. And I continued on my journey, because for me, living in alignment and living from my heart, as much as on a superficial level was like a yoga teacher or a meditation teacher, and like kind of had these identities, the deeper heart center was always about like justice and fairness and human liberation. And my early awakenings were very penetrative with regards to the global economy, knowing that it was a criminal economy, knowing that like it's not fair. And then as I've grown and continued to learn, it's just all unpacking it and being like, holy Shazam. and endeavoring to communicate some of this to people, because my observation, or certainly my personal experience over the years, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, people don't want to look. Because our identity is interwoven with the structures of our lives, and it's the structures of our lives that are often inherently kind of moldy, or kind of toxic breeding ground, right? And we don't really want to look at that. We don't want to own our privilege because it's uncomfortable, because there's likely shame there, there's likely abuses there, right? And especially if we've identified. So going back to my yoga teacher career, as I continued on in the justice work and creating all to love, it was like wanting to speak out, and like within even spiritual yoga communities, people being like, well, just stick to the yoga, like don't talk about that stuff. And then working within privilege and seeing the, again, kind of like distortion, and then later learning through listening to other creators and listening to women of a different color and a different ethnic background talking about whitewashing. And I was like, oh God, ugh. Like these, and I get it. Just because I've remained somewhat on the outside, I've never kind of really invested within certain communities, but like a part of me would kind of get the ick, or just be like, and that's, and I would hold space. Is it my own resentment? Is it because like I'm poor and I don't have the money to create those things, or, whatever. But then when the decolonial shadow work come up, when more people talked about like the whitewashing of spiritual practices and stuff like this, that landed for me. I was like, that's what the ick is. Like having the privilege through previous cycles of domination and control to then pick and choose certain teachings from those same ancient cultures that we would have stolen and pillaged from, and then to repackage and sell it under capitalism for other privileged people. And what I noticed too within a lot of these like privileged circles is like charitable work and these things, it's almost like it's purely to assuage their own guilt. It's like, look at me doing all this real good, but there's no actual deep inner shadow work to acknowledge the harm done in previous cycles or previous generations. Grand rising, Scott Setzela. How are you, my friend? You've been coming up in my awareness simply that if you want to message me your birth details, I just want to have a quick gander at your chart, with your birth time and stuff like that, if you don't mind. As in these last eclipses, I just wanted to double check over your birth chart, to yeah, highlight looking after oneself, etc. So, or to be holding space and prepare for what have you. But it might not be the case, because I was more thinking of you with regards to a specific transit. Anyway, hi Scott, good morning. A grand rising, shall we say. That's the spelling, right? So the reason people within this community say grand rising, is that we were working out like many years ago, we were talking about words and spelling, and how good morning is like a mourning, like, mourning, grieving. It's almost like a good celebration of mourning a day, right? So we're like, grand rising, grand. We rise to the day, and we weave around different lingo and language to uphold a higher vibratory, right? Okay, so again, why is historical framing super important? And this is also a big part of the media's narrative, and trying to like disarm us from acknowledging ancestral patterning, ancestral inheritance, the cells that we are. I'll give you an example. When I was really deep, about 5-6 years ago, really deep in my own shadow work, and I was I was like, fuck, and that's something too. You just survive. You just pray and hope that you'll get through it, because I was in deep emotional grief and pain for years, through various experiences and events. And I had already set the course, you see. I'd already written the book and set myself on this path. So I just had to kind of see it through. And I'm just thankful now to be more stable, and to be rewiring some patterns that I know support me, and to have learned the lesson of my own stability, that having a home and having stable structures is important, that that if we're flying too high for too long in this dimension, we're going to frazzle and burn out our nervous system. And then once the nervous system is burnt out, it takes a little while. From my personal experience, it takes a while to heal, and I'm still healing that. Like, and I'm almost a bit hyper vigilant around making sure I'm getting enough sleep and making sure that I'm moving and making sure that I'm eating well and like making sure that my environment, including the people I surround myself with, is clean and harmonious in its exchanges. And it's been a massive shape shifting, healing the core wounds, bring it back to ancestral framing, where part of that deep dark shadow work, I remember having one. I was living in some caravan at the time, and it was dark, and often the water wouldn't work, and I was like in, and I was being emotionally kind of, yeah, but I remember crying in a way, like wailing and crying in this way that I knew what I was transforming in that moment was the crying out from possibly my own upbringing as a baby, but it was so deep and heavy. And I had obviously insight from ancestral wisdom, where it was like, this is the ancestral lineage. This is all of the babies that come before you in the line that were forced to just cry out because that was a societal, cultural, and colonialist program to traumatize, disconnect from the mother and be numb enough to be a good worker, right? And like really truly our entire education system, most of our industrial complexes, right? So our education system, our medical systems, our right, go on and on and on, our economic systems, etc. They're all inherently born of separation. So we're functioning from a place of fear, which is why we feel we have to control narratives, which is why we have to feel we have to control things, right? And this is where it's like there's subtleties, is that there's alignments as being a human. Like there are personally, I personally believe that there are certain things that we know are good for us as human beings on this planet: spending time outside, being in good relationship, um, eating whole natural food, which has become harder and harder for people, in particular, people with less money, to access that healthy food. And so there's, there's a lot of corruptions, and yet we the people definitely have the power to break free and change. And I fingers crossed for people, but when you are led by the heart, you will be okay. And yet things can get intense because the intensity has to do with resolution of karmic loops, as in your soul signed up for you as a body to resolve and transform that karma. So hala, on some level, I was like, I'll do that. I'll come into that family system. I'll work with those. Both my parents are adopted. So there's like a freedom break from the ancestral, but there's also very much the ancestors here with me being like, keep going, doing good. As far as like, I don't know the lineage, but I'm still healing it. And I have seen the reflection of improving my relationship with my sister, improving my relationship with my father, improving my relationship with my mother, having better boundaries, seeing the relationship more clearly, having more compassion. However, I had to face conflict. I had to stand up for myself. I had to say stuff that I was at one point too afraid to say. I had to put boundaries, like all these things, because part of the Neptunian and Saturn conjunction in Aries for some of us is going to be a lot to do with like really, really protecting your energy and keeping it held. It's only our own beingness that we're here to manage, as far as like your energy, emotion, energy in motion, right? Because that's the how we access the greater powers, by containing more of the full self. And again, even in the patriarchal condition, we talk about five senses, and then everything else is just a bunch of those are just feelings, or you're too much, or da, da, da. But what we're learning is that sensitivity is our humanity, and that more and more people awakening to their sensitivity and working with it will access more psychic power, will access more telepathic communication, will access, right? Like, because we are all connected. That is the truth of the quantum. And yet there continues to be points in the awakening journey where there's no book out there that's going to tell you how to be yourself. There's no other person that's going to tell you how to be yourself. There's not necessarily other people that are going to believe in what you're here to do, because it's for you. It's for you to uncover and learn and express and share and be, right? And so that authenticity and that truth that radiates from within us, or that we just tap into in those quiet moments. And that was something too, like the miraculousness and the beauty of our humanity, right? Because I was having these little thoughts about how, gosh, we're so like, every single one of us has this whole inner world of experience. Like, we're so much more than what we do in this world, right? And increasingly I'm aware, holy Shazam, like it's really a miss. Like, when we get too fixated on the roles we play, being special, being important, especially the more you break it down and realize being important in a really sick society is sick. That you're bound by your own egoic identification and unable to see a deeper truth and connect to that unity via vulnerability, which is true power. And it's something that I was expressing to a friend yesterday about, these horrible people in power. And I thought, I think more and more people are going to realize this. But I mean, from my perspective, these people that are destroying other people's lands, raging war, profiting off of innocence and the ritualistic abuse of innocence, harvesting energy in manipulative ways. From my perspective, at this point in the journey, having processed and digested like a lot of it, I now am like far enough away to recognize that that's not power. It's it's the illusion of power, as in those types of people, the only way they feel powerful is by doing that level of harm. And I know it's frightening and it's gross and it's ick, like beyond. And yet, if you find love within your heart, if you endeavor to transform your pain into power through empathy, through compassion, that's true grace and power on a divine level that aligns with universal laws and allows you to perform miracles in your life. And like, so increasingly, I'm aware that for us, the masses of this planet, we want to hold space for that atrocity, knowing that we're in a point of reckoning for all of humanity. That I see what you're doing, but I know the truth, that you're weak. I mean, come on. Who would abuse children if you're not a weak bully, right? Why do you need all this stuff? I don't have an issue with wealth, but the extravagance or the excessiveness to the point of destruction just to have nice things. Come on, right? Like, so plus I mean, as I get older and I'm packing more Holla Shazam, I'm just like, wowzers, like I just don't I want for much. Like, it's a roof overhead and access to food and stability and enough to, like, it's just, there's such beauty in equanimity and simplicity that sometimes I just think I've always felt this way, but like having a humongous house, I'm like, just the amount of work, right? The amount of work to kind of keep it up versus having that in alignment flow. And that is something somebody else said recently, was like, well, what if things got huge and you couldn't handle that? It's like, well, no, because I'm structuring my life to be able to hold it. It doesn't matter if there's loads. Like, if there were loads, it would just go out into community, right? as far as wealth. It wouldn't be like buying a bunch of stuff just so that I can have it and be like, see, I'm important, I have stuff. It's like the only, from a, personally, from a higher spiritual, like, desire, that it's, that the desire to generate wealth, as in money and resource, isn't for personal gain. Right? From a empathic human, the only reason for that is one, yes, health and well-being for self, but to generate that wealth to resource back into community, to share, right? Which is when you align with that within yourself, that's also what makes people with excessive wealth, power, it's power, etc., where you can feel into the level of insecurity, shame, and deep, deep wounding there, that you must feel pretty low about yourself to hoard billions of dollar or worth of resources, whilst your brethren, as in other humans on the planet, are starving, right? And then, over the course of my life, I've engaged in certain types of spiritual and or philosophical debates with people, and often people be like, oh God, you're too idealistic, or you're too, and I've always, or classic expression of, it's just the way it is. And I've always been like, yeah, but no, it's not. We the humans are creating these constructs, so thus we can uncreate them or create something new so that we're not doing that anymore. As in, this economy that we know of is fairly new. Bartering and exchanging, accumulating resources en masse. These are relatively new via industry and technology, right? And I think of movies like The Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter or whatever, but Lord of the Rings more specifically, where you've got the kind of industry that's wanting to take over Middle Earth, right? Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Where that's kind of like and Tolkien probably said that, like, it's a representation of Birmingham in the UK. Industry coming in, right? And our ancestors being enslaved to produce the industry, it sort of ramps up consumerist capitalism and all that jazz. Hey, my good friends, how are you? I've got my two Scots here. Hi, Scott Schutz, how are you? Oh, and Namira. Thanks, Scott, for saying hi to Namira as well. To be well adjusted. There you go. So the quote from Krishnamurti: "It is no sign of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." And as you know, because I know you well enough, you really have to sort of fine tune and break out of certain cycles and give oneself permission to feel joy and feel peace, because that's always the crux. And that's where the illusion fails us, that we think, if I had enough money, or if I had this or had that, then I'll be peaceful, and then I'll be, but it's in our heart, right? Like that's like, to me, so much of the kind of the gem of many of the world's religions, but the prophets that taught us the teachings, right? Not that we're meant to follow them, or even the construct of religion or organized religion. We're meant to follow the teachings, and the teachings are within the heart. In Christian rhetoric, it's like the heart is the altar of God, and it's within that center point that we listen. And in my experience, what we were tuning to is something that feels loving and peaceful. And I would also reflect too, like, where there's no distortion, it's a clear channel. And I think some of us have been lucky enough to never really truly been disconnected from that. And that's where you have neurodivergency, autism. To me, those words that we use to describe people that have certain behavioral traits, this is an evolutionary shift, because more souls are being born unable to fit into the neurotypical / mainstream / sick, shut down society, right? We're meant to sort of fit into this matrix and just be these superficial little NPCs, right? where when we want to be the star of our own show, we want to light up from within. It's from within that we connect to that divine spark. And it's within that divine spark that allows the body to heal, which is including our emotional cruxes, right? Despite our addictions, despite, this is where, again, we don't want to get fixated on the illusion. It's a trick. It's a trip for sure, because and this is where reflection. So like, I'm naturally really reflective, always have been. And so it's only really past an event, months, years, that we suddenly go, oh my God, of course. But for me personally, this transformational living has been ongoing since 2012, 2013. So what's that? Like 13, 14 years that built up the stamina to keep processing. And it's been a slow climb, my loves, but like, life is getting better and better. But it's a lot to do with my like over and over repetitive commitment to self in love and unity, and then having to also distance myself from the lack of clarity. If I'm not getting that clear signal from any types of exchanges, then I have to pull back. I have to create a bit of distance. Because why? Because it's not my responsibility to work out that lack of clarity. It's only my responsibility to manage my own clarity. Gosh, sometimes I'm like, I do want to get back into regular shares, but of course I need it to be really like in alignment and on flow. And you guys can let me know like if it's useful to you, because really all I'm doing is like holding space, looking at a lot of different things, and then endeavoring to like work it out, like understand this life and us in it and this world. And for me, emotions, energy and motion has been a huge part of my own personal transformation and growth, healing, accessing more of that kind of expansive awareness has come through feeling pain, just allowing myself to feel the feels. And another friend come over yesterday, and she had been through a heck of a lot. And she said, oh, and then I just cried and cried and cried. And I said, isn't it great? And she's like, oh my God, it's so good. Again, coming to him and coming from very different backgrounds, but just intuitively through the rise of this sort of divinity in a global awakening, more and more people are just acknowledging it. Like, it feels good. And now we know, science backed, that crying is how the nervous system processes. It's how the nervous system finds its way back to homeostasis, right? So, and again, it's self-management to not, because again, my part of it was understand through compassion or you misunderstand the times. And I noticed myself having an anger. I was stressed and angry, and I was projecting, right? More often than not, when we get triggered into anger, there's a projection, and then underneath there's like some deeper wounding. And the blind spot is often that wounding is connected to our ancestry. It's not connected to our personal life. It's stuff we've inherited through indoctrination in millennia, right? So, and this is where a lot of these people call it the narcissistic empath dynamic. To me, it's just what we're attracting to keep healing, as painful as that is, right? But we're attracting it to keep healing and to perceive. So like, my own personal recent breakthrough was like finally loads of pennies dropping around what was going on within a dynamic. And it was unconscious programming within the other person of superiority, entitlement, and a denial of their own privilege. So if somebody's going to deny their own privilege, they're denying a huge aspect of the shadow, which is where we see people that then fixate on the identity and the performance that they're creating around that superiority. And when it's unconscious, it gets to the point where we're not able to carry it. And we'll create a circumstance to liberate ourselves, which often is just clear vision. And then through retrospect, looking back at all the different cycles, I mean, like, oh my gosh, there it is. There it is. And it's usually our own wounding as empaths that makes us hyper vigilant, that or has a pattern, a people pleasing pattern, and or that sensitivity where you're almost like a superpower, where you just know how to make people feel good. You know how to hold space for people. You know how to, and yet that will serve us and protect us until it won't. Hence, more empaths kind of uncovering people pleasing tendencies and going, I'm not going to do that anymore. But it's tricky because often when we're breaking through patterns like that, lifelong patterns like that, there's the fear of like total abandonment. But I'll tell you what, the truth is that once you get to that point of like, I'm abandoned or I'm rejected or da and you process that, on the other side, you'll be like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Because you're wiping the slate clean. So I'm finally at this point after years of processing where I'm just kind of excited, but in a very gentle, grounded way, where I'm just like, because I have my day to day, but I just know from paying attention to patterns of my own life that I'm like, because I'm not trying to control and I'm not planning and I'm keeping letting go and surrendering. It's like, now what? Now what is the universe going to ask of me? Or now what am I going to let into my life? Because I went, it's like that idea of like sitting in the flame, like you're sitting in the fire of your own karmic Hala Shazam. And then the fire goes and it cools down and you're still alive and you're like, oh my gosh, but you're born. It's the phoenix rising, right? So there's a sense of kind of like, and that's the kind of beauty power of growing. It's not about getting old. I mean, like, yes, that's fine. It's just what happens. But like, I would say it's the wisdom. Like when we're able to hold more wisdom within self, life just becomes better. And because we have the maturity and wisdom to hold it, where there's always been an element of this wisdom within self, but it was all so intertwined with my own wounding, my own shadow, my own egoic illusions of grandeur, right? So it's like letting all that go too. I guess there's a sense of returning to innocence. Or just like, for me, it's a lot like there's play and there's movement and there's like getting in the sea and there's going to sauna and having a swim. And if I feel like it, maybe I'll get my nails done, or like, every so often I'll get somebody to tend to this mop. But like, it's from within. I'm just feeling lighter and more like, and I'm Capricorn rising with the South Node there. So I'm also aware that I'm one of these signs who like upfronted my karma, who chose early life, and I'm 40, almost 44, but I'm 43 now. And it's like this choosing to kind of upfront put all the hardship at the beginning of my life so that as I age, it will just get better and better. Plus, I'm telling myself in my head, I become more and more youthful and more radiant as I age. Like somebody I was looking after for a little while there who was definitely dealing with some health issues. And I remember saying goodnight and being like, don't forget to think happy thoughts. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, like, that's what I do every night. Every single night when I go to bed, I just sit there and luxuriate in my own positive thinking around like how lucky I am to be alive and how beautiful my body is and how much I love to live in it and how, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like what Abraham Hicks talks about, that, like going on a rampage. And I just drift off to sleep and then wake up quite excited for a new day because it's exciting to be alive in this body because I choose that consciously. But is it repetitive, constant work? Yes. That's the thing. Just like we all think I have to work, and repeat, work. That's a construct created by the illusion to keep everybody enslaved to that. But again, I really kind of see it as a phantom energy. And then I'll keep praying and holding space for more good people to receive the resources to then give back into the communities of good people, and for the natural cycles of karma to hold certain people accountable. And by that, all I mean is for them also to face their shadow, because that's what a karmic reckoning is. Those of us who don't have power in the world as such, it's because it was never about that. My liberation doesn't come through oppressing and enslaving other people. My liberation doesn't come through like buying the biggest house. My liberation doesn't come through any number on my bank account. It's purely my own heart. Like it's purely just me with me in this world saying, I'm free. And then there will continue to be lessons along the way to expand in that sense of freedom, which that's part two. Makes me kind of excited about it. All right, my loves. I'm looking down. I talked a bit about historical framing. But looking back at the title, emotions, energy, emotion, everything we see is a causal from a backbone of the quantum of the invisible realms, the space in between, the empty void, the silent witness, right? And then emotion, and then thought, and then words, and then action, and then matter, right? And then that is an acknowledgement of universal law via the quantum scientific world. And as more and more people access that, as one goes, so goes the whole. So it's like, yes, it probably take a bit of time because there's like that time delay in manifestation realms, but the global transformation is happening through the emotional gate of a human field. And that's where you can't stop what's already started. The awakening has already begun, and it begun the same time that the control and domination fracture happened. So we're simply holding space for that fracture to get more and more and more and more obvious. And then there's other people that are already creating new structures. And then, I don't know, give it 50, 100, 200, who knows, many hundreds of years until we're living in a higher harmonic, more harmoniously on this planet through the vision that we hold and the karmic law of Saturn that is moving. It's because it's an evolutionary cycle, right? So it's moving us into that higher base tone, having gone through infinite cycles of death and rebirth. And I mean, it's not a fearmonger thing. I just think for a lot of us more like psychically inclined, we're just sensing, yeah, there's likely to be some pretty heavy duty natural disasters that shapeshift the power dynamics on this planet. Otherwise, I'm going to start wrapping it up. I'm wishing you all a really happy Sunday. Again, reminder for Scott, do send your birth details if you want. Obviously, you don't have to, but because probably a week or so I've been like meaning to ask you because your chart's been coming up in my awareness. So and then if you've hung around and given me thank you so much. If you dig on the content, obviously feel free to like or subscribe to my channel. I intuitively do live streams. My Patreons get weekly exclusive live interactive content. My top tier patrons get access to the Be the Change online courses. If you just want to buy chunks of the Be the Change online courses, you can go to my website. You can also book a reading. I'm a tarot reader. I read tarot. And I do intuitive astrological transit chart readings as well, which can sometimes be predictive, but I don't, I never like to kind of claim that kind of power over people. I always remind people like they're the master of their reality, right? Like the tarot cards have no power. I have no power. And the planets technically have no power either, but they are indications and they are like evolutionary markers, a way for us to understand ourselves and the cosmos a little bit better. So feel free to check out my website. I also have a shop, a Tmail store where you can buy products that I've created over the years. It's all sustainably sourced in alignment with the brand, all to love, sustainability, spirituality, and freedom. So you can get the courses. You can go to Amazon and buy my book, The Fearless Life Guide, and or again, book a reading, or if you want to work with me and do yoga and meditation and all that stuff, feel free to reach out. Again, my book talks more about like how like strengthening our physical apparatus, our body, and then really the mind and presence. So as in, I don't know if that's relevant to people, but like having a healthy enough, strong enough body and mind to do deep, deep shadow work is potentially a thing. So maybe you want to get a fitness trainer or start going to the gym, or again, I personally, yoga is the Hollow Shazam, like yoga. And yet beyond physical practice, hello, like your spiritual connection is the supreme being of your existence. So as in, because I've witnessed miracles in physical form, as in people that have hurt themselves or done this, that, and the other, that truly transform their bodies to make their bodies stronger, but pretty much solely through the light of their awareness. It's called the light body, or ka. So like when we're really infused with spirit, um, we are the regenesis. We are the healed regenesis. And I say that with a certain amount of kind of humility, because we're still working with all of our addictions. We're very much human, dealing with our human life, and like these uber powerful light bodies as well that are eternal. So it's really about allowing more of that light frequency to come in, and practices, for me personally, practices like yoga, meditation, and breath work help to anchor that. And then personally, I found you need stability in your physical life. That's where the injustice of the economic system is such a shit show, because people struggle for basic needs, and that's just sucks. It's so annoying. Like for those of us that care, I'm like, God, for most of my adult life, all this stuff that I do, the mish, is purely to like have enough to then redirect that and feed people and house people. And yet, oh, for some reason, I think a lot of us on this path, it's just like there's been a lot of resistance. People that yeah. So, anywho, come back home. It's like, it's only me. And like, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that there's so much love within. And I'm glad that I've been guided to yoga that's allowed me the discipline to like hone that awareness and be more responsible for it. Because I'm again human. It's like, God, that's part of it, is like having to own the horrible things you do that aren't nice. But then when you own it, you feel that pain that you've caused, and it makes you never want to do it again. There's the lesson. Whereas if you become more responsible and you're dealing with somebody who doesn't own their stuff, then it keeps coming back. That pain keeps coming back to you, because they don't want to acknowledge the pain that they're causing. And then those will be the karmic release valves. Those would be the karmic points that you end up creating a situation where you see something you can't see and you have to move away. Yeah, boy. Shadow work, breath, and some yoga. I mean, gee whizzicles. I wish we could just live like, I wish our imagine, right? It's nice to imagine, because ingesting the current info cycle, thing is, I've been propagating unplugging from mainstream since like the beginning of my online world. Like, I haven't watched TV since 2010 or something. So, and I still don't, but now social media has been taken over. So it's like, or maybe it always was, I don't know. But just the multiple, like, different layers of information, right? And as in, be prepared. Things could get fucking weird. Things, pardon my French, things could get violent. Things could get wild. Hence where it's like simple things like stay grounded, breath work, like Scott just put, breath work, yoga, drink lots of water, try to eat well, just the basic things. And then where things come up, where possible, help one another out, be of service to one another, but not at your own detriment. That's like, I say a lot of this stuff for myself, where I'm like, I want to give and share, but not if I'm being emotionally abused, and not if I'm being lied to, not if I'm being gaslit, right? Like, and that's been a over and repetitive cycle over and over again, is like, people say one thing, but what they're acting from is like a shadow, or a shadow is enacted, and they're unable to own that. And those have often been where like I'm able to break free, because in that moment I recognize like that's not my responsibility anymore, and I don't need to process their shadow anymore. But we sign up for it until we don't. So see, we share, and I'll put it straight and transparent. I started because I felt like it, very personal. And I have met some amazing people on the internet, and these people have become my friends and become like angels, or have been like angels in my life. You know who you are. So it's like, I'm so grateful And, you know, as I close this, I'm aware, I'm like, I don't know if it makes sense, but does any of it make sense? Does the world that we're being sold, does that make any sense? Not to me personally, but like, I'm weird. And like, this existence has always felt a bit weird to me. I'm like, gee, whizzicles, what am I doing here? What is this? What is this life? Right? And I see the world through a loving lens. And so I see this magical, beautiful, amazing planet that makes me cry on the regular for just the exquisite beauty and majesty of it all. Like, it's just so magnificent and stunning and beautiful that it's like, oh, why would you ever do harm? You know, like, I don't eat meat because I'm like, I can't kill the creatures. I don't want to kill innocent creatures. They're too cute, you know. And I'm lucky that my body and constitution doesn't need the flesh, right? So, but I don't also want to make people feel bad if they want to, but I want people that do choose to eat meat to reclaim their sacred connection and reverence for the life force that they're consuming. Just like you guys can have reverence for me now as you consume. Humble yourself, and you're like, oh God. And that's been such a huge lesson, is like, if nothing else, I'm like, I'm happy. Like, as in, I'm unhappy is a bit of a fluff word, but it's like I'm very content, and I'm just grateful to be at this point where um I'm okay. And I genuinely am finally at that point of like, if this is the rest of my life, I'm okay with that. Please. You know, just keep meditating by the sea and be thankful for water and ocean, and share when I'm guided to share. Keep dreaming, you know, just keep dreaming and moving. So yeah, check out the website, altalove.com. Thank you for being here on this magical Sunday morning, and I will see you guys next time. And don't forget to sign up to my Patreon community. There's a 7-day free trial, and you can sign up for as little as a $5 a month. And obviously you will get the exclusive content with that. But also, if you enjoy the work I do, the Patreon community is aware to financially support the brand and the mesh, and come hang out. It's so weird. I sometimes think of like, come hang out in my bedroom with me, because I'm almost always just like in my pajamas. And some entrepreneurs would be like, put your snazzies on. I'm just not that kind of entrepreneur, because like, I'm not really a fashionista. I like to be comfortable. I buy everything secondhand because I'm not into fast fashion or really any of that industry. I'm not going to take away from talent. I'm not going to take away from personal style, because like, we all deserve to express ourselves, right? I'm just, I don't know. I spoke to another female, I think, about this. Like, I haven't worn bras in like 20 years. I don't, even with teaching yoga, like, most of my yoga gear is like a size too big, because I can't handle anything being tight. It's like, anything that's too tight, like what the fuck are bras? I'm sorry. And like, some women are well endowed and they need that. They need the support, and I feel you, but like, remember the underwire, like briefly in high school, underwires, and like, I'd take them off at the end of the day and just be like, that's internalized misogyny right there. That's the patriarchy. Like, we're all meant to, and like, oh my God, the women that are coming out with being like, connecting the dots of why mainstream media wants us to all like be stick thin and basically look like little boys, because the people dictating that beauty standard are sick. They're attracted to children. Like, you know, it's just, I can only laugh because I've cried so much in the last 12 years, that the absurdity of it all, but also the fierce rage. That's the power of the light and love from within, to stand down, to stand down the people who are doing that No, 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 not by the eyes of God. I see you, baby. And we're coming to save you. And we're going to hold those people accountable. They'll learn. They will learn. It's not cool. Or they will vanish from this earthly plane and go to a part of the universe where that is like, I guess, more normal, or like us, we, you know, you siphon energy to keep surviving, but it's like, hey, that way. Welcome. Hey, you guys. Good morning. Undergarments are highly overrated. It's true, dude. Oh God, it's true. But just, you know, the attire over the millennia that women have been forced to wear, apparently for him, for to be a prize, and in our overly sexualized, objectified world, it's like, you know, the phase where we squeezed our feet into tiny things. It's the geishas, I think. And then, and again, it's global, right? And then remember the time in history when women were like breaking ribs to try to fit into corsets. What? So this is my protest. And don't even need to get changed from your morning sleepies. Although in fairness, I already got changed because I had a yoga session booked in with a client, and so I actually had yoga stuff on, but then when that finished, I took my yoga clothes off, put my sweats back on, because I'm probably just gonna chill out all day. That's right, you guys. Chill out. Have a duvet day. That is a protest. Unless, you know, by means of having to pay rent, you have to go work. That's fair too. It's all fair. I mean, it's all, I try to be open-minded and just accept everything as it is, and like accept people for where they're at. But gee whizzicles, what a humdrum of darkness that we're needing to face. Ugh, but I'm with you. I'm with you all in solidarity as far as like, stay strong. Trust your heart. I know it's like, people will try to rip it apart. People will try to take it, but that's you, baby. Sugar daddies. I might go to the sauna. I don't know. I might go for a walk. It's like, what are you gonna do today? I don't know. I might stay in my PJs all day. What did you write? I might have a doobie day. Yep. I might go for a walk. I might meditate up at the hill. I might have a dip in the sea. I might go to the sauna. I'm just being honest, like that's about it. Once the days get lighter, like sometime in March, I'm going to have a plant restoration day. So I'm going to have a plant day where all of my many, many plants go outside, get some fresh sun, and I repot them, and I put some soil, and I love them, and I feed them, because they need love. So that will happen at some point in March, and I will probably document that, maybe. I must say I'm not documenting very much anymore. I never take a selfie. I think it's something, as you age, you just get bored of your own self. Like, get the camera away. I don't want to look at myself anymore. Yeah, because here we are. Okay, thanks, guys. Awesome. That way, and Scott and Intuitive Jen. Hey, nice to see you. Like, honestly, it's comfy reign supreme, and it's like, if people have an issue with that, you're like, okay, but I'm comfortable. So if you want me to be uncomfortable, you might have to find somebody else who's willing to do your bidding. It's hard enough. Like, life is hard enough to not have to worry about the shape of your boobs, you know? Like, fuck. Oh Lord, what is, and like, and yet I'm like, I'm with you. I total lifelong sort of body dysmorphia, and hence where the sharing, because it takes me out of that and gives me into that sharing, and just express yourself. That's right, you guys. You know how to do it. If not, somehow you'll figure it out. I trust you. I believe in you. I believe in all of us. I do. I really wish people didn't have to destroy one another. And I really pray and hope that everybody finds love I do believe that will happen. I trust. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now. Peace out, you guys. Have a great day.